Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias a todos. I'm Pastor Willie of Crossroads Church. You know, sometimes God has to intervene in our lives. Sometimes God has to reach down and refocus us in our lives. Sometimes it happens because we get off track. Sometimes it happens because we follow our own plans. Sometimes it comes when God brings what they call a wake-up call. Something wakes us up and we say, I'm going in the wrong direction. Sometimes it happens when we get distracted. Sometimes it happens when we make a mess of things and we get into a situation that we can't get our way out. We can't find a way out. But God always intervenes when He has to, because God's call is never taken away. God's call prevails. No circumstance, no demon, no satanic plan can stop God's plan and call. And so today I want to talk to you about when God has to intervene. When God has to intervene. And I'm sure there are people watching today. God is using this message to intervene in your life, to reset you, to refocus you, to rescue you from the direction that you are going in this morning. And we're going to be praying here for God to intervene in people's lives, in families' lives, in our society. And God always intervenes. And Abraham is our example. He's on a journey of faith. God has called him. He's obeyed, even though he didn't know what it was going to entail. He obeyed. He worshiped God. He built an altar. Then a famine happened. And instead of calling on God, he leaned on his own understanding, went down to Egypt, and told his wife to lie, saying she was his sister. And now he's in Egypt, which is not where God called him to be. His wife is in one of Pharaoh's wives. And he's getting rich because Pharaoh is giving him flocks and things like that. And he's stuck. And there's no indication that he's seeking to get himself out of the situation. So God has to intervene. Because you know what? God's plan doesn't depend on Abraham. God's plan doesn't depend on me. God's plan doesn't depend on you. God's plan depends on His faithfulness alone. Isn't that good news? God's plan doesn't depend on any of us. He invites us to be part of the plan and makes us faithful, but His plan depends on God. Could anything stop Jesus from being born of a virgin in a manger? Nothing. Herod tried to destroy Jesus, but it couldn't happen because God's plan never fails. God's plan does not depend on anything but God's faithfulness alone. No failure on my part, on your part, can stop God's plan. No lack of faith on our part. No demon, no wrong turn can stop us. So here is Abraham. He's living in Egypt. He's getting rich in Egypt. His wife is in one of Pharaoh's wives, and God is going to have to intervene. So listen to Genesis chapter 12, verse 17 and 18. It starts with the words, "But the Lord, but the Lord." You see, Abraham was in his situation, but the Lord had a plan, and now He's going to intervene in this situation Abraham got himself in. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What have you done to me?" he said. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. God had to intervene to get Abram back on track. And I know in my life, sometimes God has had to intervene to get me back on track. And there are people out there who God has called, and you're off track. There are people who God has a call on their life, but they're off track. They're doing something else. They've walked away from God's call. I feel that very strongly in my spirit. But God is going to intervene. And we're going to pray for that today. Maybe it'll be a wake-up call. Sometimes God intervenes with something bad. Sometimes, like here, God just changes the circumstances. He used Pharaoh, who didn't even know God, to understand that what Abraham was doing wrong. And Pharaoh, an ungodly man, went to Abraham, who's the father of faith, and said, "What are you doing? Why did you lie? Why did you come down here? Go." And he sends him back and gets him back on track. Isn't that amazing? God can use anything. You remember the prophet Balaam? He's trying to go where God doesn't want him to go. And God uses the donkey to talk to him. He's trying to beat the donkey. And finally the donkey says, "Yo, what are you doing? I'm your donkey. I'm trying to help you. There's an angel right there ready to cut you to pieces." God can use anything to get our attention. So God, there's a few lessons here. God will intervene when no one else will. God will intervene. So you're praying for a loved one, a child, pray that God will intervene. He will intervene. He will intervene. God can use anything. Here he uses a pagan. God can use anything to intervene. God works with Abraham in spite of his failure. To me, that's good news. God's going to keep working with me despite my failures. And some of you out there, maybe you've failed, and you think that's the end of it for me. That's the end. But God never takes his call away, no matter how bad the failure. He will redeem whatever has happened to you. And the final thing I learned here is that even Pharaoh knew what was right and what was wrong. He knew it was wrong for him to sleep with Sarai if she was married to Abraham. Abraham ignored that. But there's a moral law in the universe, and everybody has that in their heart. So today we're going to pray. We're going to pray, and we're going to pray as I feel God leading us to pray for God to intervene in people's lives, in ministries, in situations, in our country, whatever God leads you. So I encourage you to pray where you are as we pray here. As we pray here, I'm going to ask my wonderful assistant to come on up here and help me. And if we will pray here, if you need a prayer request, put it down below. There's a link. And I encourage you to continue to follow us on this journey of faith with Abraham. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel or join the Encouraging Word group. So it's Wednesday, and today we are going to pray for intervention. So have a good time praying. God bless you.